we have the README pulled up, and we can review quickly, because most of you hopefully will be coming from part 1, where we did some objectives yesterday. So super briefly, the idea is a full stack MERN application. Users submit awesome art, pure CSS art, examples. So yeah, here's some art that people made just in CSS that I want them to be able to submit the picture and the code. Our objectives right now are the backend and user authentication using these tools: Express, Mongoose, MongoDB Atlas, bcrypt, JWT, Heroku. Yesterday, got the server set up and responding to a GET request. And now we're still working on a post request to users registered. A client sends us the email and the password, and we need to hash the password, add it to the database. We already hashed the password, so we're good there, but we still haven't connected to the database, created a model, whole lots of stuff we still need to do. But excitingly, I know yesterday I was saying how this is our main objective and then these are sub ones. But when I try to save it, Prettier reformats it. So I know yesterday I failed in finding out how to do this, but offline I looked it up, and it's Prettier ignore dot Prettier ignore. I think it is. I might have to relook this up. It's kind of like .git ignore, right? And then in here you put the files that you want Prettier to ignore. So in our case, it's readme.md. It's funny though. Yesterday I was watching a video where 2 developers were saying how much they hate Prettier, and I couldn't disagree more. I don't know how I would code it all without it. It's such a crutch at this point. Hopefully not too bad a crutch, but yeah, I love it. So yeah, we tabbed and now we saved, and it didn't reformat automatically. So these are all sub objectives that we're gonna hit today. Okay, save this. So let's check our route and then think about how we're going to go about this. So our next objective is to create a new user model with Mongoose. And we don't even have Mongoose installed or connected at this point. But let's work on that. So just to refresh our minds a little bit more, our user router, we're right here. Pull up Postman. If we send a request, a post request with this in our body, let's move over to the send button. Yeah, so if a client sends us a post request with this in the body, first off, I have to run my server before anything will happen with NodeMon app. All right, so server is up. We know we're good. And a client sends this post request. And the response.send is the string. We'll post a new user. And it took the request.body.password from here. It hashed it with bcrypt, 10 rounds. And then we can see the nice hash password down below. So this number 10 represents the rounds, the salting rounds. And basically it causes the CPU to work really hard. And so we see now when it's 10, it takes not even a second maybe for it to go through. But if we change this number to 13, we can kind of get an idea how long it might take. So that was like 1.5 seconds. And then let's try like, I think it ramps up pretty quickly, like 15 maybe. So I'm going to click now. 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. So we're going to keep it at 10, or our server will maybe work too hard. But that's the idea with hashing and with salt rounds. It's going to prevent someone with an RTX 2020 NVIDIA, newest GPU from trying to generate a hash to match yours that was leaked from Amazon. Okay, and I got sidetracked a bit. Okay, we want to create, so we have the email and we have the password, and now it's time to actually make a user model in Mongoose. So what is the point of a user model going to be? Specifically a user model with Mongoose. Mongoose is going to let us connect to our cloud MongoDB Atlas. It's going to do the connection for us. So we can write in JavaScript and yeah, it'll do the communication. And it also will enforce validation. So traditionally, MongoDB Atlas, or just MongoDB in general, the technology, it will insert anything, any object into its database as a document. It won't enforce any kind of rules. We could put, like, by mistake, there could be just, garbage here, and it would insert that in the database. So we don't want to allow that. And maybe for our email, we don't want someone to submit like one letter, right? That wouldn't be a valid email. So we want to enforce some rules about what a proper email should look like. And this will be interesting because usually I use username, but I've switched it up to email to just try something new. And yeah, so the rule, I don't know if there's built-in validation for email. I'm going to Google that and find out from Mongoose. But let's get started in creating a new Mongoose model. So to give us an idea, Mongoose model. Sometimes I actually prefer blogs and stuff to the actual docs because they give you the nice down and dirty way to get things done. But this is a good example right here. So this is the basic way we're gonna create a user model. But this is actually assuming that the schema was already created. So first we need a schema. And I'm not liking how this is organized. So Mongoose models, getting started. Okay, this is more similar to docs again. I was just hoping for somebody's kind of quick, down and dirty, but this will work for us. Okay. And I'm always trying to show you how you would Google things, even if it's unsuccessful, just because that's how you're going to do it for real anyway. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. That's something you could definitely comment. Let me know if that's just a waste of time or if it's something that's good. I'm flexible there for sure. So we want to install Mongoose. So we know we have to shut down our server. npm mongoose. And we check out our package.json. And we'll see it be added to the dependencies. All right. So now in our user router, we want to go ahead and not in our user router. To be well organized, we could write this code in our router, but it wouldn't be best practice. To be well organized, we want to create our models in a separate folder. So we're going to do folders. We're going to do a folder called models, and then within there, new file, I'm going to say user.js. And then here's all the code that's going to be associated with the user model. So I'm going to bring in Mongoose. And we're going to follow along right here pretty much. This I'm going to skip over for right now. We're going to come back to connecting to Mongoose in a second. And we're going to do that code in our app.js. That makes the most sense to me. But here we're specifically just worried about our model. Okay, so const user schema, because before we can create a model, we actually need a schema. And you can think of like schematics. This is going to be, what do you want your user object, every user object that gets produced from now on, what do you want that to look like? So Mongoose has a built-in method schema that we can invoke. And here is where we pass in what we want the user to look like. So let's take a look at what the client is sending us. They're sending us an email and a password, right? So I want it to look, I want it to definitely have an email and a password. And going back to the guide right here, this is an example of how you do it. You define the type after the property. So for email, actually and password, these are both of type string. So that's fine. We can definitely do that. But that'll only enforce validation for the type. And in our case, we actually want more options than that. So that's kind of like a shortcut way to do it. But if we want more options than just what type these things are, we have to use a object instead of the type directly. And this is per Mongoose. This isn't anything you would know besides looking at the docs. And right here is kind of an example of it. It's a little, I don't know why they pick such confusing things instead of like username or email and things that anybody normal would be doing. This is better, like the eggs and the drink. So here's an example. They're creating a breakfast model where they want every breakfast document to have an eggs property where the type is number, so like how many eggs, and then what is the smallest number that a client can submit, what's the max, is this required? And I actually haven't used this array property in these fields, which is interesting, but we're not going to use that right now. So basically for email, the type is still going to be string, but here we want required to be true. And there's another property called unique, which we also want to be true. And password is the first two are going to be the same, but we don't actually care if two users have the same password. Like when you're, signing up with Facebook, they don't check if two people have the password of 123456. Okay, that's where we'll start, and we'll play with that a little bit, maybe down the line, and to really show you guys kind of how these validations work. So after you have the schema, that's the hard work. Then to convert that to a model, hopefully there's an easy, good example. We're just going to do code like this. So we have user, and we want to create a Mongoose model that's called user, and we plug in our schema. Again, this is totally just syntax that you have to write because this is how they designed Mongoose, and you would only know it from the docs. So user, now we want to be available to any other modules in our project, so we have to export it. Okay, so we might have to return to this and tweak it a bit, but returning to first, before we go to our user router and actually use this model we created, and we might be able to check off an objective. It's a new user model with Mongoose. So we've created the user model. We haven't created the specific user document yet, but we'll get a check for that. This one right here. But now we want to actually have Mongoose connect to MongoDB Atlas. And that takes us to a pre-objective of setting up MongoDB Atlas. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's pretty easy, like any other website that you have to register for. It's totally free. It's been really nice so far. And it has a good visualization of the data that we're going to add. So this is an old project I'm working on. We'll go ahead and create a new project. And we said that this is CSS art. The name could totally change. I don't know. I'm going to keep myself as the project owner. That's fine. All right, so once the project is created, you then have to create the cluster. And the cluster is really like the database. And we're going to click the free one, create a cluster. We're not going to change any of these options. And sorry, let me expand this. So yeah, we're not going to change anything except, I guess, the name. Again, we can just say CSS art. Click create cluster. Sometimes this actually takes a minute or two. Yeah, this might take a minute or two. But there's another objective we can probably knock off when we're doing this. I'm still new to streaming. I just want to see real quick if the chat is working on this. I don't know if, because before it was disabled. So I want to make sure chat's still working. Oh, so it's not. Okay. I got to figure that out for next time. That's annoying. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that's the case. That's annoying, but I'll figure it out later. Okay, returning to our cluster, it's still working. Let's see if there's any objectives we can do. They're all kind of dependent on the database at this point. A lot of times people will run MongoDB locally, which you have the option of doing. But since we're going to eventually deploy this, it's easier just to right away run it in the cloud. Sorry, excuse me. So this is a good learning moment for me. Next time I'll just go ahead and pre-deploy a database that we can play with. Yeah, that chat that being disabled is super annoying. Sorry, I'm just checking it real quick. Yeah, there's no chat. I'll figure it out for next time, hopefully. Oh, okay. So there's an option to... Okay, so somewhere I set that this was... I thought an option that said kid-friendly, but I guess it said tailored specifically for kids, and now it's like blocking some features, which I have to... Oh, here. What happens if I set my video's audience incorrectly? Oh, wait, what? Sorry, I should do this. I should do this after. I'm sorry. It was just bugging me, but that's fine. I'll deal with that after. All right, so we're up. So once this is done, we can click on connect. And since we're going to deploy this eventually on Heroku, it's really important that you say allow access from anywhere. Because Heroku has dynamic IPs, and it could, you'll never know which IP Heroku is going to be trying to connect with. So you have to allow every IP. Okay, we'll set username as admin, and we'll just auto generate a password. I'm going to show it because I'm just going to change it after the stream, or not. If you guys want to delete it all, you can. Maybe it'll be a fun hacking exercise. I don't know. So we're going to create that database user. And basically, this is the security method that prevents anyone in the world from trying to connect to this specific database. All right, so I actually want to, I'm going to actually comment that password, because in a second I'm going to have to insert it. Okay, so we're still trying to connect, and MongoDB Atlas gives us the string that we can use to connect. So we're going to set that aside for right now. And it didn't copy. Let me try again. Okay, so let's set these two pieces of information we got aside for now, and then we'll work on mongoose.connection. So we can go ahead and Google Mongoose connect. So first we have to, okay, we have Mongoose because we were working on the user model already. So that's good. So we can bring it in. Const mongoose equals require mongoose. And then the idea is that we want to connect this Express server to the database we created, MongoDB Atlas. That's our objective right now. So looking at this as the guide, I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. I'm going to put it right under app, and I'm going to say mongoose.connect. And then I see VS Code is telling me it needs a string. So what it actually needs, though, is this link that Atlas gave us. Because this is Atlas saying, this is where I'm located. We have to wrap this in quotes, though. And here is the username, admin, that's fine. But here, the password is not just password. It's the auto-generated string we made, which we set aside right here. And I know someone eventually is going to be yelling at the video or the monitor that this is an awful security risk the way we're doing this right now. This is just to show you the simplest example of how this is working. We're going to tweak this before we commit it or push it to GitHub or push it to Heroku. We're going to tweak it so it's more secure, because you don't want the whole world to see your credentials. It would be a really bad security practice. But for right now, it's fine. Okay, so after the string, using this as an example, we see this guy here. But I'm going to go ahead and just try to run this as is, because I think it's a good little learning, whatever. So I'm rerunning our server. And I see all this ugly text, right? Deprecation warning. So here, it's telling me if I pass this option in, this warning will go away. So I can just blindly kind of follow its directions and run it again by pressing save. And now we're one warning fewer. And then this one says the same thing. If I pass this in as an argument again, that deprecation warning will go away. So we run it again after inserting it, and it's way cleaner. There's a third optional callback that isn't shown here, but I like it. It's just a callback function when everything was successful, and you can do whatever you want, but I like to say DB connected. You can say whatever you want, but just to know that everything Mongoose is properly communicating with your Atlas DB. Okay, server is up and DB connected. And I noticed there's a little bit of lag there, but that's probably fine. So this is cool though. Now our models, which were created with Mongoose, just because of the code we wrote here, this connection, everywhere that we use Mongoose now has that connection in the background. So now this user has the power to not only enforce validation, but to connect directly to the database. And let's return to our README. We definitely set up MongoDB Atlas and Mongoose connects. And now we're here where we actually want to insert into our database. Basically, we want collections right now, which is empty. There's nothing here. We want to fill with a sample user. Okay, so let's return to our user router and just once again show that when we send this request, our password is being hashed. But here, instead of responding with "we'll post a new user," we want to actually get this document into our database. So we can use user.create. And actually, this argument for create, and let me see if there's a good mongoose.create. I think this tutorial was the one I didn't like, but yeah. Yeah, let me look for something a little simpler. Or we'll check out the actual docs. So create. So model in our case stands for the user, because that's what we called our model. And then here we can see that .create is just expecting an object. And in our case, if we look in Postman, this is what our object is going to look like. So we can just use request.body because that's equivalent to this. And to show you that in the console, we can console.log request.body real quick. So we send this request again, and in the console, you can see the body right here, request.body. So this will go ahead and add it to the database, and if it was successful, it will send back to you the document that was inserted into Atlas. This is promise-based because it's async. So we're going to go ahead and use await here. Nope. And the result of whatever is returned to us, we're going to store in user. And then and then actually we want to respond to the client, and we're going to say response.json with that user document that was inserted into the database. So when you're using await, what you really want to do is wrap this in a try-catch block. Then if there's any errors in any of this code, it'll be able to send a response to the client with that error, and it won't crash the whole system that you're writing. So let's go ahead and refactor this a little bit. Let's get rid of this console.log request.body. And here, let's do a try catch. And we're going to move the await async actions into the try. And actually, if it's successful, so if this line of code right here is successful, it'll keep on going down in the try block. So if it's successful, we actually do want it to run response.json user. But if there was an error, if the user.create and the request.body was missing something, maybe it didn't have an email, it will, and there's an error, the catch will be invoked. And now we can actually respond. We can do whatever we want, but traditionally we would return this with the command next, user.post, and send that error along. And this is a little complicated, but we'll show this in detail with a few examples. But for right now, this is what we have to write for kind of a built-in express error handler to function. This next that we want to use is a call to the next middleware function to be invoked in the chain. And this is provided to us for free by Express in the middleware callback functions. But we'll definitely show some examples of this screwing up to see that invoked and what happens. But first, let's actually see the successful version of this. So here's our client's request to post with the email and password. And if we look at our user model, we said that we want the email to be type string, which it is. We want it to required, which it does exist, so that's met. And unique, well, it's going to be the first entry, so there's no chance that it's not unique. And for password, all we care is that it's type string, and required is true. So actually, let me show this screwing up first. Let's see what happens when we have no email and we send this request. So here, we get a response of this HTML describing the error that occurred, which is exactly what we want. And we see here, validation error, user validation failed, email path, email is required. So that's awesome. Our client is perfectly aware of why their request failed. And then the same is going to happen if we don't have password and we send this request. That was just a syntax error, which also produced this error response. And here it's a little harder to read, but data and salt arguments are required, and those are produced from the hash password. So this line of code errored out before even the validation, because both of these await lines can produce an error, and then this catch block is executed. So why did this fail here? This request.body.password was null, and await bcrypt.hash threw an error. So that's actually really cool. But we want to put those both back in. And okay, so let's try to see what happens when it's successful. We should see the response being sent of the document in itself. Okay, so we got back the MongoDB inserted document. And what's awesome about Mongoose is that it auto-generated this unique ID for us. So we didn't have to do the work of maybe importing UUID and using that or anything. So that's just something we get for free because of the nature of MongoDB. And then I believe this property is metadata for either the version of MongoDB or something. I need to look into it. I never have. It's not going to be affecting anything we really do in the course. So yeah, and now to actually see that this was inserted into MongoDB, if we refresh this, we can see a new collections was added called users, which is also a little bit of magic going on, because if we look at our model of user, we just said user, and this actually translated it to be a collection of users. It pluralized it and lowercase it for us automatically. And again, we didn't have to create a collection manually. It just knew to create that collection if a document was being generated using that model. So then to look at the actual document, it's the same information that was sent to us in Postman, but we can see it visually in our database. And then before I leave this block of code, I'm just wondering if there's anything else I wanted to show. I think we're probably good for now. This next function is going to take a bit to get used to. That's one of the trickier parts of Express. But again, it's just a call to the next middleware function, because Express is just the whole idea of Express in the most abstract level, or abstract idea, is a request comes in from the client, modify the request with function after function after function, eventually send a response. And the next command is saying, go ahead and go to the next middleware function. I'm done doing what I need to do. But a lot of the times we don't need to use next because we respond. And when we respond, that's the end of that whole request process with that particular client. And with that, I think we're going to end the video there just because I want to get the chat feature fixed. And yeah, I kind of have a bad headache today too. So we're going to call it there, but we definitely stored the email and the hash password in the database. We connected Mongoose, set up the Atlas, created the user. So we got a little bit done. It was pretty good. And I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.